Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you happen to stand to this Truth Bomb riff. This is Patrick Lovell. My name is Patrick Lovell, and I'm joined by the new Untouchables, and we're recording on Friday, May 30th at approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's so nice to see everyone with quick introductions, and welcome back from your reunion last week. June Carbone is in our upper left. Right below her is Paul Pelletier, Marc Dann to his immediate right, and of course Bill Black down at the bottom of my screen. And I will include, of course, descriptions and links to bios and so forth as we move forward. But guys, it's been a pretty hectic week as always, but also exciting in some ways. I think the first thing that I want to address that I thought was really interesting is a fellow podcaster, a gentleman by the name of Mike Figueredo, happened to get some inside footage of these town halls of Republicans recently, and the outrage was incredible. I heard things lobbed at some of these Republican representatives that I never thought I'd hear, as well as chants by Republicans, tax the rich, to set the tone. It just absolutely didn't really register that this was a Republican crowd, considering I thought everybody had turned into MAGAs, of course, right? And so on that note, the first and kind of an accompanying piece that I just want to address to kind of start the dialogue off was I also caught an interview with Rachel Maddow being interviewed by Georgia Senator Stacey Abrams. And it was amazing from the standpoint that they were talking about a sort of framing that has been driving me ever since I've learned about the con. Now, I've always been anti-fascist as an American. Anything that resembles authoritarianism, anything that resembles, oligarchy or monarchy or aristocracy, of course, I'm antithetical to, because that's just my DNA as an American. But what this conversation was really steering was that what drives the fascism is corruption. Now, interestingly enough, we've been talking about corruption for a very long time. That doesn't just focus on Donald Trump. There was a lot more corruption prior to that. And there's a lot more corruption that enabled, of course, all things, this monstrosity that we're in the midst of. So I wonder if I could get your opening comments about really Republican outrage and this notion that corruption burns and fuel, or basically puppeteers fascism, if you will. But is it really just Donald Trump that's responsible? Maybe we could start the dialogue with you, Jen.
Sure. Well, the idea that corruption breeds fascism, if you have the rule of law, if you have power that's dissipated, you also play by the rules. So what's our story of the hour? Elon Musk is on drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, I'm shocked, absolutely shocked. But I find the much more interesting story is, of course, that for public servants, we have all kinds of rules. We say if we're going to give space contracts to private industry, the workers, the employees of the space contractors need to submit to drug tests because people can die. All right? What does Donald Trump do? He ignores every rule in the playbook. This is corruption writ through. The second point I want to make, I have another article I get to brag about that came out this week, playing off my book. And one of the things we found in writing a book about women and describing cases that are about sex discrimination is that it made sense to talk about discrimination in a world in the mid 60s and the 70s, a relative economic equality among white men and governed by the rule of law. Today, we have lots of women who feel they're being treated differently because they're women. They don't win on those charges, and the charges are meaningless because one of the women sued Tesla, sued Elon Musk. Everybody's treated badly at Tesla. Yes, women are treated badly in distinctive ways. Yes, one of the first things the Trump administration did was to dismiss the racial discrimination lawsuit pending against Tesla. But the story is not a story of discrimination. It's a story of abuse of power. And when you talk about abuse of power, you are intrinsically talking about corruption and talking about decimation of the rule of law. And once you've broken all the rules, you get to get away with it only if you subvert the rule of law. Accountability, accountability on substance, accountability on process. And that's corruption. And that runs through how, Musk got where he's gotten to be the richest man in the world because he delivered the numbers Wall Street wanted. You can admire Tesla, you can hate Tesla. What Tesla did was to run roughshod over workers' safety, over uh, product safety and product quality issues, and to view things like recalls or even outright securities law violation as at best the price of doing business. Musk got to where he is by breaking the rules and getting away with it. That's corruption. And he's governed by flouting every rule, and personally getting away with it. The only accountability has come from Tesla customers. And Donald Trump, of course, has run his entire career on that basis.
Well, I find that really fascinating, but also inspiring from the standpoint is I've always tried to juxtapose capitalism and democracy in my mind. Both enable a degree of freedom of choice, obviously. And I find that interesting that the only people that are holding Tesla accountable, or I should say Elon accountable, are his customers, which is really the way it should be. But in the form of democracy, the voters should hold our elected leaders who are lying, stealing, and deceiving, as you used to say, Paul, as I recall, really longingly to hear those words from you, because you, after your prolific career, particularly at the DOJ, you ran for public office. Can you comment about, your sort of takeaway of now at this moment, 3 months into the Trump disaster, that Republicans are literally standing up and courageously voicing their dissent?
Well, as it relates to just that, it seems to me that there is some sort of uprising in the United States by people who have been impacted by the chaos, the corruption, and just the general uncertainty that's been going on. So I think, people, in my experience, don't vote based upon just the corruption issue, right? They voted for Trump. It was well known how corrupt he was. They voted for him. So they vote on pocketbook issues for the most part. And certainly the people who stayed away from the election, certainly the people who voted for Trump and held their nose, those are the people that are very sour, I think, on what's going on right now. And I think, as June said, the corruption breeds a lot of this, but what's the effect that it's having down at the bottom where the people are it's raising prices for them. They're seeing that billionaires are getting off. People are losing their Medicaid potentially, right? So now what Trump has done through corruption and other things is trickling down to the people who probably voted for it, not the MAGA people, although it may trickle down to them, but it's going to take much more than that to win them over. But you don't have to win them over. So the big question in my mind is whether it trickles down enough, whether enough people are really pissed off to vote for Democrats in the midterm elections, and whether or not the Democrats are going to have a message that's going to resonate with people. That's where I think it's going to come down on. But I do think, yes, this all stems from capital C corruption. The question is, how is this corruption affecting the everyday voter?
Well, just a quick follow-up question to that. And sorry to put you on the spot, because you can wear both hats, right? You can wear the hat from your career in DOJ as a prosecutor, but you also literally did run for office. And so even though you laid it all out just now, right? Can you take it a step further? Just Paul Pelletier running for Congress right now. Let's just say we're able to give you, the platform and run with it. How might you set the table from your experience, given what you're seeing? What might your mission and your vision be for the people, given what you just said?
Remember, my expertise is as a failed politician. Let's start off by saying that. Number one. Number two, my congressman, rest his soul, Jerry Conley, just died. So there's an opening, but no, I have no desire to run for that. But so what, first of all, I think depends on what district you're in, right? In my district, where Jerry Conley was, is a very, very blue district. You don't really have to have too much of a message to attract enough people to vote for you. But in those red districts where they are, where the Democrats are working on those Republican seats right now, and when I say red, I'm talking about purple, really. Districts, a lot of them are in New York and a lot of them in California. The approach has to be a lot of things, right? You have 100,000, 150,000 Medicaid recipients in your district. They're going to be impacted, number one. And depending upon the district is, what Trump's doing is affecting each district separately. But there are clear message, all rooted in corruption, all rooting in the rich people doing well, the poor people doing poorly, that will resonate with a lot of people. And then the question is, do we have a Democratic candidate that's going to rally people to come out and vote to make a difference in these districts? Remember, these California districts, the ones that Democrats lost, some of them they lost, and the ones they won, some of them were by literally dozens of votes. So there is a chance in some red districts and purple districts to take back those seats if the messaging is clear, if the candidate is right. And I think it's going to be much broader than California, New York. I think a lot of districts that shouldn't be up for grabs will be up for grabs if the Democrats refine their message, because there are a lot of people out there that are suffering now, and it's going to get worse.
Well, I appreciate that micro analysis. I wish we had a board in the background to show some of the percentages in the polling to match that. But Mark, I'm going to turn my attention to what really was what you've been talking about the past several months, quite frankly, especially what you had offered from the services of your law firm. I found it amazing as we're looking at I'm trying to think of the actual courts that were responsible for turning the tables. Oh, I know it was. It was the United States International Court of Business, or Business Court, or something along those lines, that basically said all of Trump's tariffs are illegal. And then, of course, that matched what you were talking about of supporting small businesses that were being unconstitutionally affected by the increase in these tariffs. What's your comment about the revelations of the last week?
Well, it was the Court of International Trade and in fact, two different decisions struck down Trump's tariffs in a very thoughtfully and well-researched opinion that's been now appealed to the Second Circuit. But the fact is that was brought by a small winery in California, who was concerned about the tariffs and the retaliatory tariffs that were to follow. And they raised the objection. It wasn't big business has been either hiding under their desk or lining up to put money into Trump's pockets. And it's the small businesses in this country that are at the most risk, and they're the ones that's frankly our last hope of people to step up and challenge some of these policies, and they did. I mean, I know so many people. My former wife used to be in the she used to sell Fiesta ware online. And now that was American made, so it was a little bit different. But her whole business was depend on the price that she could acquire the plates for and how much she could sell them for. And so and millions and millions of Americans, even more during the pandemic, went into business for themselves because with the change in the employment world, there are less and less opportunities for people to maintain middle class or upper middle class lifestyle by working for an employer. The security isn't there. The companies that used to be, you would never imagine losing your job, like IBM and the big companies, they no longer allow the kind of job security that people used to have. And so the security has been, particularly during the pandemic, was in people starting their own businesses. Many of those businesses depend on importing parts or products from overseas. And it's not just China; it's all over the world. And these folks who thought they had found the answer to the evolving economy have now found themselves, making trying to make decisions in a environment that literally changes every day. I mean, I couldn't wait to talk to you all about the observation from the Financial Times that Trump is that these tariffs are subject to taco. Trump always chickens out, but it's not just the tariffs. That would be bad enough. But it's the changing environment, the uncertainty. The people have to place bets. If you sell stuff and your main selling period is Christmas, you have to be placing those orders right now, and you can't guess. You have to and you have to pay for all that stuff at the price that you buy it at. And so when the taco keeps turning, it's gonna leave people out of business. These people have small business loans. These people have loans secured by their homes. We represent a lot of business owners. Uh, all the places that they could turn to for help are no longer carefully regulated. There was a story I circulated today about these business lenders that make loan sharks, would make loan sharks blush at the 400% interest rates that they charge what's called the merchant cash advance business, which was about to be regulated by the CFPB, which will no longer be regulated by the CFPB. So all their alternatives are bad, but at least one of these companies stood up and they won. And I think the Second Circuit will uphold what they did. And how deep in the bag the U.S. Supreme Court is, we're going to find out really quickly here, because these are clearly unconstitutional movements that Trump has made, and intentionally so, to the point where I started to wonder this week, is this really just street theater? Does he want to do these things and lose so that he and his followers and his accolades in Congress can claim that the deep state stopped them from doing what they needed to do? I mean, is this just a game for them? I don't know. I know I went a lot of different directions there, but the most important thing is that if people continue to stand up for their rights and don't lay down the way the big corporations have done, we've got a fighting chance here.
Well, that's really interesting that you would preface TACO, the abbreviation that I'm going to turn to you, Bill, in that context. But I think it does, Mary. I'd like to try talking about, kind of bouncing around, but I think they're completely parallel here. This buffoonery of Trump demonstrating he has no idea how to do business, but let alone being a president. And it's so ridiculous and so elementary. I mean, it's like, I can't believe, I thought America had lost its mind a while ago, but it's like off the deep end, right? And we know that there's millions of people that aren't that way, and we have to connect with them somehow, somewhere. And we're in that process of doing it. But as it relates to the authoritarianism, which depends on lies, cheating, stealing, deceiving, and intimidation, but then to the context, that is it a bluff, right? I mean, there's actually a sort of calculus that I think traders have to endeavor based on this taco concept on which way they're going to bet, right? Can you bring those ridiculous concepts together that our economy and our democracy or our country is all being led by liars that are incompetent?
So think of these C's. courageous, competent, candid, and conflicts. So you asked me to talk first from my economics hat. In economics, the key concept is revealed preferences. We don't care what you say you believe. We care what you do. That's how you demonstrate it, right? So my question is often, again, the usual one. Where are the business leaders that are publicly trying to save democracy in the United States of America, save the rule of law? Where are the giants? Warren Buffett retired. We know Warren Buffett hates this stuff, but he's near he's 100 years old, basically. Why am I going to take the last months of my life and do this? But the taco trade is that conflict part. What's the most dominant part of economics in the world? Finance, right? Who has the most political power? Finance. Well, finance doesn't need to make money in the old-fashioned way of having good products. That is so not what finance is all about, right? So the taco trade is how do we make money from stupidity and cowardice and lies, which is to say, from Trump, right? Who will systematically and reliably demonstrate those traits. And the taco trade is two things. I can make money on the way down and I can make money on the way up, right? So the first part of the taco trade is Trump says something incredibly stupid and does something, or at least says, I'm about to do something incredibly stupid, typically in the form of tariffs. The markets who understand what this would do go, oh my God, and they collapse. So I know as a trader, a Wall Street trader, there's going to be an initial collapse. So I can make money because I can bet against the economy. And a massive part of modern finance is betting that things will go bad and making money because things go bad. But the second part is the really fun part, right? And that is he always chickens out, which means he's always going to retreat, which means the markets are going to go, oh, thank God. He's backed off yet again. And so the markets will reliably have an up phase. And so they change their bets, their financial bets, such that they gain with this inevitable recovery. It's a twofer, right? Finance ain't going to get in the way of Trump. Finance loves Trump is a money machine for finance, right? The smart guys, they love it. Volatility, bouncing around a lot. That's the greatest thing ever. For regular Americans, it's the worst thing ever. So they're not talking about the taco trade to stop Trump. That's just the boys in the back room laughing at the moron, right? The old phrase that if you within 5 minutes of sitting down in a poker game, if you don't know who the fool is, you're the fool. And that was the fun part. Go and watch the press conference-ish thing where he was asked this question because he clearly is clueless, right? It isn't simply that he hasn't heard the taco phrase. She explains it. The reporter explains it, and he doesn't get it. And then it becomes clear that everybody's laughing at him because he's a moron. And then he starts going, well, you're asking nasty questions. You can't ask any more nasty questions and such. All right. So I think we should do this for every famous Mexican street food. There are at least 20 of them. We should have an acronym for all of these that relates to how Trump does these things and have our acronym, our Mexican street food, of the day on all of these things. Okay, so back to this whole concept of revealed preferences, right? What did business tell us coming into this disaster? It told us, and journalism told us, and the smart guys told us, which is to say CEOs, that CEOs were geniuses. And we were in and I quote Thomas Friedman, an ultra meritocracy or a hyper meritocracy. But of course, only in business and only in the C-suites. There's MSNBC in their idiocy keeps running this clip from Nicole Wallace saying, well, the brightest people never go into government. They all go into business. And you go like, how many times do they have to do stupid shit? How many times do they have to blow up the economy, bankrupt the firms? Paula and I and Mark can go through this in chapter and verse. You would be months of taping of all the idiocy, right? And it's because you make money by the company losing money. That's what looting is all about, right? So at the same time, this was accelerating as the Obama administration refused to even try to prosecute any of the CEOs that led the great financial crisis, blocked folks like Paul. Remember, this is this record of enormous success. We've, watched the con for Mark's success in Ohio with next to no resources. Then the savings and loan debacle, then the Enron era. There is no place in the world like what the prosecutors in America achieved in those periods. And that's why they feared us. And that's why they destroyed the criminal referral process. That's why it's part of the reason. I mean, part of it obviously was terrorism. But after they transferred many of the FBI folks that specialized in elite white collar crime and demoted it to priority 10, which is everything else. 1 through 9 are terrorism. 10 is everything else. And within everything else, financial fraud is number 7. So like 9.7 in terms of priority. And transferred all these agents. Well, you know what? We can hire people because Nicole Wallace is completely wrong. You have no idea as a regular person the quality of federal and state litigators and prosecutors. It is often supremely good. They don't want to get rid of us desperately because we're incompetent. It's exactly the opposite.
Right.
We beat them over 90% of the time, right? And very bad things happen to their clients and all of those type stuff. So back to revealed preferences. No, CEOs are not geniuses, much less the hyper geniuses that are transforming life. And how do we know this? Because as their power has accelerated, what did that cause in terms of lost GDP, present value of the GDP? $41.7 trillion is the estimate of conservative economists. What has happened to wages since 1970 for working people? Right? Are we, in fact, in the hands of geniuses in the business community and ethical geniuses and ones who really care about America? Because where the hell are they?
I'll tell you where they are. They're on the screen and they're not on MSNBC. And thank you for that, because that's why this is the new Untouchables. And I've got to I know you've got more, but I want to just briefly intersect with Paul here. And nice to see you, June. Welcome back. Paul, that was, I felt like I just watched your favorite, I don't know, Red Sox and probably Big Poppy knock one out of the freaking park here. Of course, the Bill Black telling it like it is. But I got to be honest with you. This last week, I'm watching Cheryl Watkins and the other whistleblower during your era, particularly with Enron and WorldCom. They had a front page op-ed on the New York Times, and then they were featured prominently by Jen Psaki, and I found this to be very intriguing to me. So Jen Psaki, who replaces Rachel Maddow, who comes out of the Obama administration, is absolutely clear to me. She has no idea what control fraud is. She has no idea what actually created the Enron slash WorldCom debacles. And she's kind of talking about, the need with this legislation within the big, beautiful bill. Again, another level of just mammoth stupidity, but in the fine print, it's like we're going to get rid of even more regulation, particularly as it relates to, as I recall, I think it's fraud investigations, which brings us right back to, what Bill was alluding to, especially, when you guys came up. And again, Paul, guys, everyone watching this, he was right in the thick of Enron. He was right in the thick of WorldCom. He was right in the thick of the biggest Medicare fraud of all time. And so much so that then he gets in the situation with AIG and the great financial crisis, right in the hive of all of this. So I'm going to put you on the spot again, but with a different hat here, Paul. So in this question, you're not a politician. You're now going to be the attorney general that cleans up the mess of Pam Bondi. Where do you start?
Well, thanks for not asking me political questions, because Mark, of course, is the only successful politician on this broadcast. So look, what Trump is doing and what Project 2025 is doing is hollowing out the ability of prosecutors and the government to handle elite financial fraud. Right? They're destroying our ability to go after crypto crimes. They've destroyed our ability to go after Foreign Corrupt Practices Act cases, foreign bribery. They've destroyed our ability to go after public integrity. They've dismantled the public integrity section. They've destroyed our ability to go after kleptocracy, right? This is all with a purpose. They are hollowing out the experience in the Department of Justice. People are leaving by the droves. Even those that weren't fired are leaving by the droves. They're announcing on a daily basis the fact that they're pardoning these huge fraudsters across the country. They're announcing we're open for business. The next attorney general that's legitimate, assuming we have, by the way, first of all, the president continued to say when he was running president, they're destroying our country. Our country. We won't have a country left. That's a dog whistle to the financial fraudsters, the fraudsters who were being targeted. It's a dog whistle to successful white people. That's what that is. What the hell are you talking about? We will have no country. What's escaping? What part of the country are we losing? And it's a message to well-to-do white financial people. So that's that. So this is all being hollowed out on purpose. And I will tell you, it will take not one attorney general, not two attorney generals, not three attorneys. It will take a generation of attorney generals to fix and restart the Department of Justice in a way that you bring back experience, that you bring back talent, that you bring back ability to do this. It is going to take a long time. What Musk has done with purpose, what Trump is doing, what Heritage Project 2025 is doing, is all with a purpose to destroy it for good. And they've been somewhat successful.
June, this is one of the more candid, I shall say, discussions with the new Untouchables here that I have had the great honor of being in the midst of. And while you were away, Bill really just told it to us straight. I mean, there was nothing to be mistaken about the level of incompetence, but wrapped into this criminal syndicate that, as a producer, I mean, I could have a heyday with this. And I think I've seen this in Monty Python throughout the years, or more importantly, National Lampoon when I grew up, meaning the satire is off the charts, right? But it's our reality. And yet many millions of regular, good working people of gender and obviously, diversity are literally the targets of this train wreck. To blame them, I suppose, in this continuation of this concept of authoritarianism and obviously the worst degree of it, fascism. Can you tell us how you're looking at through the lens of what these gentlemen just laid out so clearly?
Sure. And let me be clear, I am not gone. I just turned on the video when the connection gets unstable. So, uh, no, this is part of what I'm saying, and we do have to think about the messaging. So I'm curious Mark's viewpoint, but I asked a friend in Ohio why Sherrod Brown lost. And one reason is the amount of crypto money flooding in funding the opposition. But the other is this whole attacking Democrats as supporting trans rights. And it reminds me of George Wallace. When you read histories of George Wallace, the racist governor of Alabama who ran for president uh, back in the 60s and in 1972, basically trying to bring racism to the North, earlier in his career, he lost for office. And his takeaway is using the N word, I will never be out-end again. Trans rights are the equivalent. There's a mayor in Omaha, Nebraska, and they tried the same thing. Hey, this guy wants to let, uh, the wrong gender into bathrooms. And he ran ads saying, she's talking about potties. I'm talking about fixing potholes. And I think we have to think about that message. One of the podcasts I like to listen to is Voices from the Iowa Revolution, or where I lived, rural Missouri, living in Missouri. And the message is look at school teachers. School teachers have been villainized by this administration. Either they're called government schools, suggesting they're lazy, or they're teaching your children that, Johnny can have two mothers. What a terrible thing. But in fact, when you look at teachers and you look at the messages she's developing as a Democrat who has run and lost in rural Missouri, the message is, hey, we're in this together. They're out to get us. We have schools only 4 days a week in rural Missouri because they've cut the budget. We have incredibly high turnover. And the people who are being pushed out are the people who aren't working for money, aren't driven by greed, actually care about integrity, actually care about your children. And that's the question, how we get a grassroots movement that makes it clear when you're talking about Harvard. That's because you're not talking about the head of Goldman Sachs. The people who are ripping you off aren't Harvard. I mean, Harvard may be insufferable, or it may be courageous, but it's not ripping you off. The people who are making your life worse are people like Musk who thinks you don't need you don't need Social Security, you don't need health care, you don't need assistance when you're down. You can just rig the market and become a billionaire too. And if you don't become a billionaire, you're worth shit. And that's the real message.
And that was a powerful one coming from a woman of your stature. Thank you for that. I want to turn, Mark. I mean, like
Yeah.
the theme.
Well, yeah. I have a different theory on why why Sherrod lost Ohio. And it wasn't because Sherrod didn't run a good campaign. And certainly the flood of crypto money was shameful and embarrassing and overwhelming. I mean, they spent more than crypto spent more about $40 million in Ohio, which is like 10 times what U.S. Senate races used to cost in total. to run. And that's just the crypto industry pumping that money. And so the money matters at a certain volume level. I once had a political consultant that I was asking about, whether we should have a blue background or a red background on our commercial, and it all comes down to tonnage. Um, so the end of the day, it's just about, and it's also about me smart, make you rich. I mean, how do you reduce your message to something like that? We failed at the national level to embrace the parts about Biden's administration that actually did hold
Mhm.
oligarchs and financial predators and exploitive employers accountable. There was not and it was a very nationalized campaign, and and Sherrod swam against the tide by finishing I think 7 points above Harris in Ohio. So clearly he focused hard on the message of protecting people's pensions and the work that had been done on behalf of the working class. Here, for the first time in American history, we since Franklin Roosevelt, we had a Democratic president that actually made serious progress in holding the folks who were rich and fighting us accountable over, by the way, the objections of everybody that worked for him. And Biden certainly, is with his refusal to understand his own limitations at the end, certainly, trampled on his own legacy here. But what a wonderful, what we had something to sell. We had our potholes versus potties. Um, instead we chose to talk about joy, and we tamed our fire, because she didn't want to lose the option of herself replacing the progressive FTC members, with people that would leave Uber and Facebook and Meta and all these other characters alone. The corporatists took over the campaign. The only reason that those things got done, it was because of the people at the bottom in those offices, in those enforcement agencies, in the CFPB, in the FTC, who were waiting for a moment where there would be a president that would take the lid off, and Biden did that. But they ran away from it. We ran away from that, and why we did I have no idea. It's insane, and we continue to run away from it,
Well,
as Democrats.
and we're
And until we start to offer something that's better, and as June said, it's how we hold these people accountable going forward. That's the key. How are we going to hold? And that is the message. The message is that you're being cheated by your credit card company. And now they have free reign to charge you, and even Josh Hawley agrees that there should be a 10% cap, on interest rates, on credit cards, or on late fees, $10 charge on cap on late fees on credit cards. Simple stuff that they did. We did it, and there wasn't a single commercial about that in the entire presidential campaign. So I don't think it's a mystery, why we lost, and I don't think it's a mystery how we can win going forward, because we have many more examples of the real world consequences. What worries me is this, and I was listening to NPR this morning, and they're reporting from Hungary, where I'm actually going to visit in a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit of this firsthand. What they did there was they created a age limitation for judges in Hungary. What Orban did to consolidate his fascism was to clean out the judiciary of anybody who knew what they were doing. And so and then appointing his folks to replace the judges over 62 years old, which sounds very young to me. And I'm sure the rest of you on this call. I still got a few years left in me, and a few good working years. But The Constitution held here in the U.S. Trump can't do that because our federal judges are appointed for a lifetime. And so what did he do? He gutted the regulatory. He instead it's going to be harder. But he by purging the Justice Department, by purging the FTC, by getting rid of the CFPB, Trump has done that. That's their strategy to lock in the fascism and eliminate the most remote possibility that they or their supporters can be held accountable.
I.e., corruption burns and fuels fascism. And boy, am I glad you hit that, because I was thinking to myself, I was standing on my own island throughout the campaign, because I kept saying, "Where's the prosecutor versus the felon?" Right? I mean, I
Right.
saw
Right.
Lawrence Tribe, and I saw Weisselman, and I saw Rachel make the case, obviously, but I thought that there was such a golden opportunity, but that's where it got really
Well,
squirrely.
and they started there, and then the oligarchs on our side pulled them back.
Right, and it became, let's etch a sketch the last 15 years that obviously
Mhm.
Bill was talking about previously, and then let's go to Hope and Joy we can believe in, or Hope and Change we can believe in part two, to be a little bit more dramatic about it, because that's what it was. It was this open-ended sort of you know um, platitude, right? And it was like, okay, no, wait a second, there's some real stuff going on here. And not to mention all of the other shenanigans or illegal activity that may have or may not have taken place in the run-up, obviously, in the election, which again, Mark Elias is of course all over with, spending his time and energy as the top legal, let's say, persona of the Democrats as it relates to whatever's going to happen in the election. But I'll bring it full circle to your expertise, Bill, and all of your expertise that fortunately I've been a repository of, is the notion of, yeah, corruption and not holding these guys to account is where we have to turn the tables and flood the zone, because there's certainly plenty to go after, isn't there, Bill?
Yeah, so two stories on this revealed preference, one of which, the second one, picks up right where Mark was talking. But first, the two premier private anti-corruption, anti-fraud entities in the United States, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and such. Now, there should be some quotation marks in that, uh, created this Institute for Fraud Prevention. And they did this global search and such, and they hired me and they said, hey, don't worry, you don't have to do any fundraising. We are the two groups and we know everybody. And fundraising is going to be a breeze and we're going to handle it. Said, great. This is right after Enron. So fraud is, Enron's, I think 1991, WorldCom 1992, and a whole series of others. It becomes clear that it's not just
2000.
this one-off type of thing. Yeah, two then. Sorry, 2000. So great, right? We're right in the period, and they send off these requests, and they're only looking for $40,000, which is, chump change for these organizations as an annual thing. And so that they mail off to all the top banks, all the top insurance companies, all the top audit firms, right? And they do it with their personal signatures as head of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and head of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and such. Long story short, we got $0. More to the point, we asked to be able to pitch them, dog and pony show and such, and why this made sense and to why they should work with our group and what kind of substantive things we should do, what we could learn from them, what were their priorities. 0 entities said, yes, we would like to talk with you, agreed to meet with us. Virtually every single one did not reply at all. That's revealed preferences. Second one, right? June's graduation, just last week. They have a panel. It's on AI, and it's AI and finance. And who's the big guy? The big guy is the Milken Institute, as in Michael Milken, as in the multiple confessed felon for financial fraud, the man who has never indicated a single ounce of regret other than that he pled, for any of these things. And it will take, and we might even want to talk about this in some future one. So I'll just do the ultra short version in all this. He spins this alternative universe in which he says, you know what we really need is AI to do loan underwriting. And you go, well, we had AI. Countrywide was the world leader in AI for loan underwriting, and it was all a scam. So you might want to tell people that, right? What else? This guy, last time Trump was in charge, was put in charge of a newly created entity at the CFPB to have feedback from the industry. And he, in that role, created an immunity program. And he was absolutely outraged. I mean, like spitting mad years, a couple of years later at this Princeton reunion about how Biden had come in and appointed a real commissioner, kind of Mark was talking about. And one of the things he did was kill the immunity and say, our priority is stopping fraud and predation by these people. And we need to do that. We need to go after the big guys, by which he meant the most prestigious CEOs running these predatory operations. And this speaker was, I thought he was going to become physically ill in expressing his rage that anyone would think something called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau would actually seek to protect consumers involved in finance. That is how brazen the world has become. That is, again, the revelation of whether they're really coming from and the world they really want. And the world they really want is building on what Paul said. They want immunity. They want, in fact, they want more than that. They want to be able to kick us in the teeth and make us apologize to them for getting blood on their boots.
What a disgusting way to close this one out. I was, yeah, but I'm just talking because I'm a guy that doesn't like to stomach that kind of behavior. I'm all about where's the law, and this has got to take these guys down. I mean, look, the audacity you taught us. I mean, what Mark talked about, thinking about Viktor Orban, he must have watched the con. To get incompetent judges, just like incompetent underwriters and all of the guys that were selling, the loans back in the day because they baked into the hustle of the number, right? And then on down through the entire criminal process and the control fraud. Go ahead, Bill.
Right. For thousands of years, the elites have understood that the key is not just being able to defraud and predate, it's to be able to do it with impunity.
Right, which
So
is
for thousands of years, they found a way, and that's typically why, quite appropriately, the slogan is "No kings."
absolutely.
Right. Well, and Trump wants to do for these financial predators and oligarchs what the Supreme Court did for him,
Yeah.
which is to allow him to operate without any potential accountability at all.
And he wants contributions and power in return.
Exactly, and tribute.
Go ahead, Paul.
Just he also wants a big ass plane.
Yes,
Right,
he does.
which was like 2 weeks ago. Where is that now? It's at the United States Air Force, and we're talking about. Look, we're coming to a close on this really lively and incredibly important discussion. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the new Untouchables first and foremost. And coming to a town near you, we got No Kings coming up. Earlier, I prefaced Mike Figueredo's podcast where he revealed the Republicans basically in these town halls erupting. I'll include a link down below here. I also want to plug my colleague Eric Vaughn's Corruption Incorporated. There's a new platform that we're all in the midst of that we got to get as many eyeballs because we're going to continue to germinate as much revelation as we possibly can. But it was interesting as all of these new untouchables were talking, I kept thinking about the ingenious title of what this effort is. It's Corruption Incorporated, and the under ledger is The American Way. I mean, that's just this is what it feels like. I mean, it's this like the circus of fraud is suddenly what we've become. And the emperor's new clothes, the blinds are off, and it's unacceptable, and we will find a way. Until next time, guys, I will thank you for your time, and I will reach out onwards and upwards. Take care.
Patrick, did you want to me to stay on for a minute so you could fill me in?
Yes.